Pashka was just a cool guy. They met at a nightclub at the birthday party of their mutual friend. Julia at first glance singled out from the group of people sitting at the table this handsome tanned guy who kept himself simple and natural. It was comfortable and fun to be around him. He had no intention of impressing others. But for some reason it turned out that the decisive word, the funniest joke, belonged to him. Julia was especially struck by his smile, gentle, charming, somehow childishly shy. She disarmed immediately, attracted like a magnet. On the dance floor, he also had no equal. He danced as if he had been doing just that all his life. Then Julia was convinced that Pashka did everything else in his life just like that, easily and naturally. They got married 2 months later. Leaving the registry office, Pashka grabbed Julia in his arms, pressed his lips to her cheek and whispered, "I love you. And I promise to take care of you always." His work took a lot of time: negotiations, trips, meetings. Probably, this is how a person who, at the age of 26, holds the post of vice president of a prestigious company, should work hard. But Julia was becoming more and more annoyed by his late returns from work, endless business trips. Most of all she hated Pashkin's telephone. It began to ring from early morning and fell silent long after midnight. Pashka felt guilty, tried to arrange small family holidays. His imagination was inexhaustible, from a romantic dinner in an exotic restaurant to a sudden weekend trip to the sea. At such hours, Julia felt the happiest. But the holidays were coming to an end, and she began to get angry again, more and more often arranged a debriefing on every occasion. Even Pashka's smile could not disarm her now. Her friends envied her, and she felt more and more unhappy. Pashka wanted a child, and it seemed to Yulia that there was no need to immediately burden herself with such a burden. That evening she was simply beside herself with rage. Of course, a month ago I promised my friend to be at her birthday party with her husband, and this husband called a few hours in advance and said guiltily, "Sunshine, don't be angry. I have an urgent meeting. If you want, go yourself. Yurik will take you." Yurik was Pashka's driver. Maybe I should go with Yurik, Julia asked angrily and hung up. Now she was waiting for Pashka from work to popularly explain to him that only the last bastards can do this, and that if work is dearer to him, then she, Yulia, can simply disappear from his life. Pashka smiled apologetically from the threshold. This time the smile turned out to be somehow forced and therefore especially guilty. "Forgive me," he said wearily. But it was not in vain that Yulia prepared for half a day to surrender without a fight. Her monologue turned out in the best theatrical traditions, full of pathos and pathos. Pashka sat silently on the sofa, looking at the floor. He did not try, as he had done before, to soften the situation, to defuse it with a joke. When Yulia fell silent, he raised his tired eyes to her. "That's it, I can't do it anymore." Yolka issued the last volley in a sobbing voice. "And I'm leaving." Pashka looked at her silently for a few seconds, then said quietly, "Then I better." He got up and went to the exit. Yulia, who did not expect such a turn of events, only silently looked after him. And in the morning his mother called and said that Pashka had died of a heart attack that night. She saw Pashka in the church, crowded with people who had come to say goodbye to him. He lay in the coffin, his head slightly tilted to one side, and it seemed to her that he smiled guiltily at her, apologizing for the last time. Stunned by the pain of loss, she did not immediately comprehend the meaning of what had happened. And a few days later, sitting in an empty apartment, sorting through photographs that forever captured their short family life, she suddenly realized that it was these moments next to Pashka that made up her great, but such a short happiness. She sobbed soundlessly, burying her face in the pillow, which still carried the scent of his cologne. In the morning, completely broken, Yulia wandered around the apartment, mechanically getting ready for work. And suddenly, quite clearly, she realized that her life was over. Pashka loved her, his love was boundless. And she spoiled his short life with petty nitpicking. And I never had time to say the last time sorry. So, she should go there to him and there tell everything, explain, so that Pashka would understand that she loved him too clumsily, stupidly, but loved. The evening descended on the city. Yulia stood at the window, clutching a pack of sleeping pills in her hand. I looked at the windows of neighboring houses, in which the light came on. And with envy and longing I thought that now happy people, happy families are returning there. Or maybe someone is also mediocre and ruthlessly trampling on their happiness, as she did. Yulia brought a glass of water, wearily sat down on the bed. Automatically took out one pill after another, laying them out on the bedside table. Then she lay down, curled up in a ball. The pills were vaguely white in the dark. Well, that's all, Yulia thought wearily. It's all my fault. I lost Pasha. And I'll fix it. Tears streamed down her cheeks at the thought of her husband. She silently swallowed them, staring up at the ceiling. Then she held out her hand for the pills. And suddenly she pulled it away. For some reason it seemed terribly to die at night, in the lonely darkness. And Julia decided to wait until dawn. Everything will be easier in the morning. Wait until morning, Pashenka, she whispered into the darkness, curled up on the bed. For some reason, she remembered how, at the exit from the registry office, Pashka whispered to her, "I will always take care of you." In a dream, she saw Pashka among the bird cherry branches. He stood in the sunshine and looked at her sternly. "Pashka." Julia reached out to him with all her might. But he continued to stand still, all the same demandingly looking Yulia straight in the eyes. "Forgive me." She shouted to him, wanted him to hear, understand, forgive. And Pasha smiled. He smiled that same shyly tender smile that struck her from the very first meeting. He smiled and took a step forward. Julia saw that he was holding the hand of a blonde blue-eyed baby, so similar to Pashka. Hold, smiling, he pushed the baby towards her. This is Pashka Jr. Take care of him. The kid took a few steps towards Yulia, buried his face in her stomach. Yulia jumped up, sat up in bed, looked around. It suddenly seemed to her that Pashka was somewhere here, nearby. The wind lightly shook the curtain on the window, then a little stronger. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind ripped the curtain, and she knocked over a glass of water, pills scattered on the floor. Julia shuddered. Pashka fulfilled his promise to always take care of her. Sobbing, she collapsed onto the bed. And suddenly I felt how gently, but persistently, something stirred in my stomach. Julia froze. It was her child Pashka Jr.